In the opening moments, a mere glance away by the driver nearly sends a bus full of children to their doom. A deer's sudden appearance causes a swift, panicked turn of the steering wheel, sending the vehicle careening into a forest and out of control. The brakes fail unexpectedly, inciting screams of terror from the children as the bus breaks through dense foliage and plunges into the icy river waters. As the windshield shatters instantly, river water floods in. With only 2 adults on board, the passenger is knocked unconscious, becoming a burden. The panicked driver flings the door open, allowing even more water to rush in. Concerned solely with his own escape, he leaves the children to a perilous fate. Chaos ensues among the children, with Joe struggling to maintain order to no avail, until Simon, small in stature but mature in tone, takes charge.
Stop it! I'm not going to let anything happen to any of you. Understand?
Seeing someone their own size speaking with such authority convinces the children to listen. Simon opens the back door of the bus, then heads to the waterlogged front to organize an escape. Joe first drags the unconscious passenger to shore, then returns to carry the children to safety one by one. When Simon realizes a child is missing, he re-enters the sinking bus, only for the tires to give way, sending the vehicle deeper into the water. Joe dives in after seeing this, followed swiftly by Ben. The water quickly rises above Simon's chest, but he finally finds the trapped child whose foot is stuck under a seat. Diving under, Simon frees him and they head towards the back door, but the swift current slams it shut. The feeble strength of the two is no match for the door, pressed shut by the powerful current. Glancing at a window, Simon dives again, pushing the child upwards. The child, knowing to open the window but lacking strength, struggles before managing to pull it down. His head pops out, his cries attracting Joe and Ben, leading to their rescue. However, as Simon surfaces, the sinking bus pulls him back down. Joe frantically calls for Simon, diving repeatedly in search. Fortune finally favors him and Simon is brought to the surface. After a struggle, they make it to shore, where the now conscious pastor rushes to assist. Everyone is safe at last, with Joe looking at the unconscious Simon before collapsing to the ground.
Don't leave.
Simon's remarkable courage, despite his small stature, has a backstory beginning with his birth. His mother's sneeze was all it took, leaving the attending doctor in utter shock. Born tiny, no larger than a fist and with underdeveloped organs, doctors predicted Simon wouldn't survive the night. Defying odds, his father watched over him from outside the window all night, yet Simon tenaciously clung to life. Diagnosed with various complications, doctors again doubted he'd live past a week. Miraculously, Simon thrived, reaching the age of 12. At 12, Simon's stature resembled that of a 3- or 4-year-old child. His small frame, delicate voice, unattractive appearance, and severe nearsightedness made him the butt of the town's jokes. Neglected by his parents, the townsfolk derisively called him Big Mouse. In class, Simon was passed around like a toy, even the teacher blaming him for disruptions. Accustomed to being targeted, Simon endured silently, never protesting. Despite his hardships, his best friend Joe was the school's most handsome. Their unlikely friendship stemmed from both being perceived as flawed by others. Joe, with the town's most beautiful mother, had an unknown father, making him the subject of gossip and branding him as an outcast. Sharing the burden of societal judgment, Simon and Joe naturally gravitated towards each other. Together they roamed countryside paths, frolicked in flower-filled meadows, wandered through dappled forests, and splashed in chilly rivers, sharing endless conversations on floating planks. Simon practiced holding his breath underwater, urging Joe to time him without knowing why. Curious, Joe questioned Simon's unusual practice, to which Simon admitted ignorance. Visiting Joe's home one day, they were greeted by Joe's radiant mother, beaming with joy. Peeking through the window as Joe's mother welcomed a visitor named Ben, who brought gifts but received a lukewarm reception from Joe. To pique their curiosity, Ben mentioned the gift would move and left it on the table. Alone, the boys eagerly inspected the bag, their wild guesses interrupted by their shocked screams upon opening it, revealing a taxidermied armadillo, much to Simon's delight and Joe's indifference. Simon, wanting to stay over, received an indifferent response from his parents, shocking Joe's mother with their coldness. Witnessing Simon's sadness, she embraced and kissed him, even knitting him clothes for lack of proper attire. Simon's defiance in church and his teachers' disregard for his reasons highlight his struggles from family to school and his belief in his purpose, leading to his teachers' dismissive response to Simon's earnest beliefs.
And what kind of nonsense is this?
Joe's mom bursts in, urging Joe and Simon to leave before she confronts the teacher with full force, declaring her unfit to teach Simon.
Because that child has more faith than you'll ever know.
As autumn deepens, Joe's mom and Ben's relationship rapidly progresses, with Ben naturally becoming Joe's stepfather. Joe and his mom represent the only good fortune in Simon's life. Baseball brings Simon joy, but also a painful memory. Joe's mom always supports Simon at his baseball games. Seeing her, the coach deliberately lets Simon play. Struggling with his helmet and wielding his custom-sized bat, Simon faces ridicule from opponents. Joe's mom cheers him on and Simon always responds with a smile. However, a tragic accident occurs during one game. Joe's mom, cheerfully watching, witnesses Simon hit the ball with all his might, resulting in a perfect shot. The ball flies high, striking Joe's mom outside the field, causing her instant death. Joe's mom had been like a mother to Simon, and now he's accidentally killed her. Distraught, Simon runs to the beach, crying out to the vast ocean.
I'm sorry.
Uncertain how to face Joe, Simon stays away during the funeral, wanting to comfort Joe but feeling unable. He leaves a paper bag with his favorite baseball card at Joe's door as an apology. Realizing Simon's gesture, Joe responds by leaving a bag at Simon's door with his favorite player's card inside, signaling forgiveness. Simon finally visits Joe's mom's grave, gently tracing her name and praying for angels to guide her to heaven. The boys remain inseparable but never discuss the accident, the pain of losing a mother fading with time. Just as they start to find peace, Joe's grandmother reveals her limited time left and urges Joe to find someone to rely on, sparking his desire to know his biological father.
Only your mother knew who that was. She never even told me.
Joe believes finding his father is crucial, but his grandmother dismisses the idea, saying a reliable father would have appeared by now. Undeterred, Joe decides to search for him anyway. When Joe shares this plan with Simon, Simon remarks that the infamous baseball vanished. No one would want an item linked to a death unless it was out of guilt towards the deceased wife. Unsure how to find the ball, they sit by the roadside watching passers-by and speculating. As the boys were at a loss, the tall and handsome gym teacher approached, expressing sorrow over the tragic accident and praising Joe's mom as a special woman, offering help to Joe whenever needed. This sparked suspicion in the boys, wondering if the remorseful gym teacher could be Joe's father. To uncover the truth, they hid underwater in the pool after gym class, emerging only when everyone had left. They sneaked into the gym teacher's office and found a baseball in a cabinet. Joe, anxious, inspected it, only to realize it wasn't the fatal ball, turning their hopeful lead into disappointment. Joe, overwhelmed by frustration, lashed out, breaking glass and smashing the cabinet, leading to their arrest. At the police station, faced with a choice between jail and community service, they opted for the latter, tasked with babysitting for a third-grade winter camp. With all officers on patrol, Joe's grandmother unable to drive and Simon's parents suggesting he stay at the station, they turned to Ben, who supported their quest for truth without blame. Simon felt his time was short, yet he was unclear on his divine mission. Time seemed like a beast, slow and impatient, fast when time runs out. In their haste for answers, Simon and Joe overlooked life signs. Unbeknownst to them, everything was interconnected. The school planned a performance where the biased teacher, ignoring Simon's feelings, cast him as a baby, not for the first time. Simon's open defiance during rehearsal left the teacher humiliated, who then complained to the pastor.
Help. Please. I'm gonna strangle him. I swear to God, I'm gonna strangle that little granite mouse. If it's the last thing I do with my bare hands, I'm gonna strangle him. I'm just a little friend.
The pastor confiscated Simon's cherished baseball card, only to be returned post-performance, which seemed an impossible task for Simon. During the play as baby Jesus, Simon impulsively pulled his crush, playing Mary, into the manger, causing chaos. The teacher, distracted by flying angels, almost let one escape. The mayhem escalated when a child knocked off a loosely attached headpiece with a staff. As a boy tried to confront Simon, Joe intervened, resulting in a chaotic scene. The teacher, attempting to restore order, was vomited on by an angel with a fear of heights, fainting, while the pastor was furiously outraged. Simon realized the gravity of his actions when the pastor decided to confiscate his baseball cards and banned him from the babysitting service at the winter camp. After being reprimanded, Simon cautiously asked the pastor if being created this way by God meant there was a special plan for him. The pastor, who should have been a source of affirmation, denied Simon's belief in a divine purpose, especially when Simon needed it the most. From that day on, Simon's health began to decline, his resilient spirit no longer able to sustain his fragile body, inevitably leading to his deterioration. Joe wanted to visit Simon but was turned away by Simon's mother, and his father dismissively questioned the worth of seeing a freak. Hearing this, Joe sternly informed Simon's father that Simon was not a freak but a hero, and he didn't deserve to be his father. On the day of the winter camp, Simon had recovered slightly but didn't plan to join. Instead, he came to bid farewell to Joe, intending to retrieve his baseball cards while the pastor was away. Meanwhile, at the camp, the pastor often sought out Joe for conversation, appearing guilt-ridden but hesitant to speak. Simon, meanwhile, stealthily entered the pastor's office, using drawers as steps and books as bridges to climb the highest bookshelf. Retrieving his baseball cards, he unexpectedly found the baseball that killed Joe's mom, revealing the pastor as Joe's biological father. Simon hurried to find Ben to take him to the camp to reveal the truth to Joe. When Joe learned the pastor was his biological father, he broke down and fled, understanding why his mother concealed his father's identity. The pastor, a figure of moral authority who fathered a child out of wedlock, would face societal scorn, a burden Joe's mother chose to bear alone. Joe found the father he longed for, only to realize he was not someone to rely on, as his grandmother had warned. Distraught, Joe cried by the river, with Simon silently supporting him. After the camp, Ben drove back alone, leaving Joe and Simon on the bus. Despite the serene lake and the sunlight filtering through the snow-laden cedars, the boys were too troubled to appreciate the scenery. Joe, feeling betrayed by the pastor, isolated himself, ready for independence. The narrative comes full circle when a deer causes the bus to crash into the river, leading to the heroic actions of Simon and Joe as described at the beginning. After saving the children, Simon collapses from exhaustion and water inhalation, and Joe, worn out, also collapses. Upon waking in the hospital, Joe rushes to find Simon, whose hospital room is visited by the girl he likes, who has heard of his heroic deeds.
You're a hero. Simon Birch.
A faint, hard-to-detect smile finally graced Simon's face. After the girl left, Joe approached Simon silently. Despite feeling exhausted, Simon mustered the strength to open his eyes. His first concern was for the children's safety, and upon hearing they were unharmed, he and Joe reminisced about the ordeal. Simon, being small enough to fit through the bus window, was trusted by the children due to his size. This time, to save them, he held his breath underwater for an impressive 200 seconds. It was then that Simon realized he had fulfilled God's purpose for him, even as his own life was drawing to a close.
You're the best friend I ever had.
I know that's true.
Simon then quietly closed his eyes for the last time, as snowflakes began to fall outside the blurry window, marking the end of his life in the cold winter. The town would no longer see the inseparable duo of Simon and Joe. Joe was left to navigate life alone, riding their shared bicycle, running through fields of flowers, traversing forests dappled with sunlight, and diving into the icy river waters all by himself. Reflecting back, Joe remembered how his mother thanked Simon for standing up to the teacher, and Simon's gratitude in return.
You know what, Simon? Thank you.
Joe now understood that his mother thanked Simon because she learned from him the virtues of resilience and confidence in the face of ridicule and adversity. These qualities helped Joe through many tough times. Now Joe too possessed these traits, not allowing sorrow or loneliness to bring him down, always finding beauty in life despite the mire. Decades later, Joe, now an adult, frequently visited Simon's grave. He had a child of his own, whom he named Simon. If being forgotten is true death, then Simon would live on in Joe's memory, his spirit passed down through generations. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.